Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are getting ready for a 20-minute race at the Nürburgring. There has been no qualifying though, so the grid order is completely random. Completely random, it is in the order where the people joined in, so it's as random as can be. And one thing you might have noticed as well is that there is only one car on track, or one kind of car. It is the M4. Now, I've only driven the M4 for about 20 laps, and so far it seems to be a relatively easy car to get a hang of. It has a lot of rotation, I've noticed. Even under throttle, it behaves very nicely. Unfortunately, I was only able to do a couple of laps before I had to call it. So it would be interesting to see who's going to take the overall win, because I know for a fact that there are quite a few of the very fast drivers on the back of the grid, seeing as how there is no qualifying. Or there was no qualifying, pardon me. Now, my expectations would be that the people that are going to be making a lot of overtakes are the number 72, which is all the way at the back, Anders, who's a very fast driver. Chris Corbin as well, he's relatively, well, he's in the middle. And hopefully, we'll just be able to see plenty of battles all across the field. Let's have a look at how the race starts. $10, a BMW will win it. I'm willing to take that bet and say that a Mercedes is going to win it. Nürburgring nature. Mercedes does very well there. I'm trying to figure out how to do helicam. Can I do helicam? Here we go. Ooh, nope, it's okay. Here we go. Now, the 10 bugs, Santiago, are those American bugs or British bugs? As the 101 car comes to a complete standstill there, that's a bit odd. We're not going to be talking about a shoey. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. And we're off. Looks like Chris has had a very mediocre start and he's trying to squeeze Celine off. Oh, look at Sonky, very aggressive. Oh, and we've had a couple of offs already. Sonky, of course, is a very, very aggressive... Oh. Chris? Chris? What are you doing, Chris? So, Sonky B has taken it all into turn one. Now, Sonky, of course, has an advantage, seeing as he lives very close to the track. Although, I don't think he's driven this part of the track that much. You have to see this. Like, I have the incident screen on my left, and it's completely filled. So there has been quite a lot that has happened. Number 28, he has had the worst of it, so it seems. Max Simmons. And Chris has had some running as well. Now, I don't know if you remember me saying, like, he was going to take a good couple of overtakes. But according to my timings here, Anders has taken a lot, but if I look at my stream, he has left the server. So I don't know what that is about. Celine Witcher seemed to have spun it. And I don't know what happened there. Now, as much as I... where have my... Well... This is... This is all going well, isn't it? So, apparently, Celine Witcher has had an off, as we just saw. She is currently in the pits. I'm hoping that she gets back on the way as soon as possible. Now, dare I say that this is the first time I've ever seen Kyle Sisko in a car that is not the Lexus. That never happens. So take your screenshots and pester him with it. Because this is a day to remember. As Dammit Io is fighting with Thompson into turn one. Who has the biggest dares. Let's go with that. And it seems to be that Thompson currently is managing to keep him behind him. Now, the BMW, from, like I said, I haven't really driven it. I'm unable to tell you, Chris. I have no idea what happened. It looked like you were having a decent race, but I don't know what happened. End of lap 1. Should... I honestly can't tell you, mate. I don't know. Now, I was rooting for Chris Corbin here because Sonky B is currently in P1, which is legally not allowed. Yes, I can. Give me a second. What car number were you, Chris? Chris Corbin is 102. As per usual, 102. And you're gone. Oh, no, you're still here. I don't know what happened. This is 101. That is probably why. Wait, what happened? Let's go find. Wait a second, what? End of lap 1. Yeah, but this is very peculiar. So these are all the incidents. That's not me. You're 102. This is 102. Oh, wait. You're, sorry. You're very delayed. I think there's like a minute delay or something. So worry not. You're gone. And currently we have Sonky B still in P1, which is, in my opinion, not allowed. Sonky should be at the back of the grid, for taking people out all the time. I'm joking, of course, but he's having a good race. I'm very happy to see that for him, genuinely. No, Chris, I understand. Luckily, there are 2 more races to come with, I don't know the other tracks. I think it's Spa and Zolder. Yes. I'm very much looking forward to Zolder. Zolder is one of my favourite tracks in the entire game. I don't know why, I'm not very good at it, but I just really, really like the flow of the track. It's good. As Thompson is making the move on Brian currently, and he makes it stick, and Danny is waiting to you know, get some scraps of the battle in front of him. This here is a nice three-way train. And so far, Thompson seems to be, well, I wouldn't say significantly faster, but a decent amount faster. I was sure that he was the quickest in the free practice, so that does explain a lot. Now, as much as I don't want to say it, Sonky is pulling a bit of a Lewis Hamilton currently. He's got a 6 seconds gap behind him, and I don't know what to tell you. I was rooting for Anders to catch him, but it doesn't seem to be happening. And I think that Anders has suffered the same problem as Chris Corbin, because I do not see him on the timing. However, he is still in my broadcasting program. I don't know what's up. So, we're keeping our fingers crossed for Thompson or Brian or Danny to take that pole or that P1, because you know, we can't let this happen. We're all going to be very angry if it does. All the jokes aside, Sonky is showing a very, very nice base, and it's very good to see that he's keeping the guys at bay. Now, in the back of the grid, Mr. Yearwood seems to have had a bit of an incident as well, as his car looks a bit battered. But he seems to be currently fighting for P9 with Kevin Manning. Well, I say fighting, he's chasing him around. And well, I hope that the field sort of closes in a bit on each other, as Thompson takes the fastest lap of the race with a 56.6. No, excuse me. A 55.8, my apologies. Yeah, I said it before the race, if Sonky does win this race, then I can't say a bad thing about him for at least a week. And I'm going to stick to that. I'm a man of my word. I'm going to say it. I'll be the first to admit the man is driving a very good race. He's showing a very, very nice pace. Pardon me. So I'm going to have to eat my words, or not talk shit about him. Talk crap. Sorry, crap. Ryan Quinn is currently following Max Simmons, and oh, that is a very nice livery, I have to say. A very nice collar. They match very well. Now, we know Max, who has a tendency to pick the worst cars, but somehow managing to pull them off. And hopefully for him, he manages to keep Ryan Quinn at bay and keep that P6. And I don't know what has happened to Kirk. Is Kirk still in the race? Yes, he is. It's been a dare I say, uneventful race for him. From what I gather, he hasn't been in a crash. But he also hasn't taken that many positions. What has happened to Kirk Heath? Kyle Sisko, the very orange car. Let's see, he has got a 5-second gap. Wait, what happened to him? I'm gonna go to the replay. As that is currently still working for the fact that I do not have custom liveries loaded. Well, I don't know what happened to Kyle. He seems to have lost 2 positions. Now, another thing to notice here is that Christopher has had a very unfortunate lap 1. He crashed into the back of Sonke B and is managing very, very well, if I do say so myself, to pull it back. It's currently in P7. Well done. And the gap to Sonke is now slowly getting smaller and smaller as Josh Thompson, my apologies, is in clean air and is lap after lap very, very quickly. I'm very curious to see what happens. Now, I'm obviously biased towards turn 1, so I do hope that Sonke is able to keep it for the last minute. I think he'll be fine, knock on wood. And what do you know? Celine Witcher is also, well, attempting a recovery drive Unfortunately, the nature of these 20-minute races is exactly that. They're only 20 minutes. So you can only do so much in that small frame of time. And Brian is doing his best to keep Dummy from taking his P3, his podium. It's very good to say, though. There's very hard racing. I can't speak. There's very hard racing, but the guys are keeping it very clean, very tidy, and so far it's been very entertaining. Now, the people of Turn 1 have been pestering me to do a shoey, and I keep letting them know that I'm not going to do it, but if I was Sonky, with the cards stacked against him, I would be very tempted to do one after this podium. Just saying. Now, what is still very, very weird is that, according to my live timings here on the left, it says that Anders is currently in P5. But, according to my race data, he's not even in the server. So, what has happened? I don't know. As Sonky has just finished the race in P1. And Josh Thompson is P2. Dammy, P3. And Brian, P4. So, Dammy did manage to keep that podium place. Well done. That was a very good race indeed. Bit unfortunate that there are some disconnects or some weird things happening. Let's see, as Kirk Heath has still yet to finish the race, and he is very, very... he does keep it. Now, if the M4 is anything like the M6, I hope not. Oh, we spun it before even crossing the line. What have you done? That was weird. Oh, they are pushing Celine, who appears to... I'm confused as to what's going on. But there's one thing I've learned from being in Turn 1 is that sometimes you don't question things, you just accept them and admire them, embrace them, and... well, that was quite something. Chris, I have the replay saved. Even though I'm watching, the replay will be saved and I can show it to you afterwards. Don't worry. I'm going to be right back, 2 seconds. And we'll be back for either Spa or Solder. And we are back. I do hope that that was not too loud. I know for a fact that I can be quite loud, so my apologies if it was. So in terms of Zolder, I don't really know what sort of lap times I can expect from the GT3 cars. I've only ever driven GT4 cars around here, but my estimation would be 29s, 30s would be quite feasible for these guys. And it's not going to matter because there is no qualifying. However, it's still fun to guess what these guys are going to be doing in terms of lap times, at least in my opinion. And Zolder is a very tricky track for sprint racing, in my opinion, because it is such a short track and lots of opportunities to have a little bit of an off. And things can get hairy. I think this is the first timed lap. No, it was, but it's not anymore. From Chris. Oh, lovely. My broadcasting software just decided to go belly up. Give me a second to relaunch it. We're currently still in the new days of a new patch, so anything can and will probably be broken for quite a while. Worry not though, as Max just did a 1 minute 30.6. So at least I guessed somewhat correctly. It's always good to know. Now, has Chris managed to keep this lap on the black stuff? And is he going to be able to time this lap? No, he definitely isn't. Come on, Chris. Get it together. As Gerd Fischer is doing a 29.8. Good lad. Dan is currently improving his lap by 0.8 of a second. Which should put him on 30 seconds as well. Oh, but he's racing with... I don't know who that is. Don't think he'll be too happy with that. But that's the nature of Zolder. It's a very short track. You'll only lap it in 1.5 minutes, so there's bound to be some issues, especially when there's 19 cars on track. And we seem to have a rule breaker. I don't mean to tattle on people, but Celine is driving in the Ferrari. Probably in preparation for more female races. Which, in my opinion, is a wise thing to do. You can only get so much practice and take it wherever you can. Miles Dixon, who's also joined the race. Look at that, from Poles. So very glad to see you here. Let's have a look at the timings and see if somebody is improving their time. Currently, Josh Thompson is up 0.5 second as he is nearly done with his lap. Let's see how he fares in terms of lap time. Now, I don't know about you guys, but the Ferrari, my apologies, the BMW seems to be very, very stable in the middle of the corner. You can carry quite a bit of speed without it ever doing any funny things. Andre Michael. Who is currently also up 0.8 of a second. Oh, is that going to be legal? I am not sure. I didn't see it properly. But I don't know how the track limits are for these cars. They seem to have sharpened the rules in the latest patch. Moments where you didn't usually get a warning or a track cut, you now do. So he might have invalidated his lap. I am not sure. Now, I'm hoping that somebody of the Turn 1 management is looking, because I would like to talk about the colours that are displayed on the car of Andre right now, who, in my opinion, look very, very nice, and maybe an idea for the official team colours. Now, this is... well, don't know what that was. Can we manage to find that car again? I would love to find that car. I don't think we can. That was quite interesting. Either way, Chris Corbin has put it on pole position with a 28.9. That is quite the lap. Well, Mr. AJ, I have been very absent in the last 3 weeks because I've had some issues with my wheel braking and stuff. So, yes. Potentially, yes. But the dark green and yellow, they look very, very mean. I really like them. So, let's have a look. Gert is still on his lap. Nope, he has decided to pit. It doesn't really matter because the starting order is random. But still, it's good to picture where the guys are compared to each other. I'm going to choose to ignore that. AJ. Monkas. I don't know what that means, but I wholeheartedly agree with Ryan Quinn. Also, the track condition is fast currently. Don't know if that's intentional, but that may cause some issues. Now, we all know that Turn 1 of Zolder is can get very, very hairy for the people involved in this race. And I hope that Christopher manages to get a better start than he did the last race. So that he can defend his position instead of be taken out by Sonky. So, let's go to Chris Devo on pole indeed. It seems to be that the person that joins first gets pole position. Well, we need to make that happen. Although I'm just gonna say it. You know, he has a way of taking himself out of the race, so it doesn't matter that he starts on pole because after the first lap he's not on pole anymore. So, you know, it will rectify itself in a way. Now, we are indeed on a fast track. With the amount of cars, it will only take a lap, maybe two, to go to optimum, I would imagine. But still, that first corner, or the first couple of corners, is going to be very tricky. And I'm willing to bet that there are going to be at least a couple of incidents. I'm hoping, of course, that the guys are going to keep it clean. But you know how these are. Stuff is guaranteed to happen. And it appears that Celine, according to my software anyway, Celine is in the pits or has left the server. I don't know what's going on. Can I do it? Nope. Unable. So let's see how this race start is gonna go. Zolder indeed. I really love Zolder. It's probably my favourite track in the entire game. As we are waiting for the green flag and see how they get off the line. And it seems like Chris has had a good start. And oh boys, keep it clean. Well done. So far, it seems to be very tidy indeed. I did not expect that. There's only been 4 incidents, which have been very minor touches. That is amazing. As we are getting through the first chicane, and I would only assume that the Beamer can handle those curbs quite well. Because during the practice laps, we have seen people take them quite liberally. I'm still unable to get in the car with Celine, who still seems to be in the server, but I don't know what's going on. Well, let's go with my apologies. I'm trying to fix the software here, as it seems to be struggling. Okay, now it seems to have fixed itself. We should be able to enjoy the angles that the software picks for us. Now, Chris seems to be pulling a healthy gap to the cars behind him, which is Dan. And behind that is Thompson yet again. Are we going to be able to see him take those positions where he pleases? The 102 car, Chris Corbin, has just taken the position from Max Simmons. And is able to make the move stick. Now, I'm not going to jinx it. Well, I am, actually. But the racing so far has been very, very clean. Considering the track that we're on, it has been absolutely superb, in my opinion. Very nice. As we can see the cars jumping over the first chicane, of which I don't know the name. So we're just going to call it the first chicane. Ooh, there must have been a little bit of a moment between Jonathan Seville and Kevin Manning. But yeah, this is amazing stuff. Now there have been, if I can see this correctly, there are 3 cars currently in the pits, which is Celine Witcher, which is stop go 30 penalty. I don't know what for. What could that be for? Speeding in the pit lane? I don't know. I really don't know. So Celine has managed to get out of the pits, but had a little bit of an off. And look, we have a bollard stuck in a car. Now I hope that it's only visible to me, and that the driver doesn't see it himself, because that would be quite unfortunate. I am trying to have my my broadcasting software make itself behave, but it's not reacting to what I'm telling it to do. So bear with me a second. Or else I'm going to have to do it manually. And I really hope that I don't have to do that, because that is very awkward. It appears that the more I click, the buggier it gets. Okay, that's good to know. Currently, I can't even connect to the software. So, what I'm going to do really quickly is my apologies. I'm going to just hop back into the server real quick and make it connect again. And instantly it works again. So I'm not going to click, I'm just going to let it slide and do whatever it wants. The only thing I am going to do is broadcasting. Here we go. Right. My apologies for that. Now, it's a thing to notice here that Jonathan Seville, who is currently in P7, does have the fastest lap. However, it's one thing to have the fastest lap, and it's another thing to be able to overtake other cars. Currently, it seems to be... Oh, he seems to be stuck behind Max Simmons. Now, I hope for him, of course, that he's going to be able to overtake... Oh, that's that... Is that Oscar Sandberg, who has had a little bit of a slide there? I think it was. But overtaking on Zolder is not necessarily the easiest thing to do if you're in even cars. There are a few heavy braking zones, but they all do not necessarily allow you to make the overtakes stick, and makes it very tricky for Jonathan Seville. Or potentially make it very tricky for him. So there are a couple of names that I haven't seen before. D. Willems from Poles. Let's see who else. There was another name that I hadn't seen yet. Let's have a look. Now, what happened to Gerd Fischer? Has he had an off as well? We can see the battle between Oscar and whomever in front of him. So Chris Corbin is closely following Oscar Sandberg around. Are we going to be able to see them make the overtake? Now, my apologies, AJ. The stream is has got a decent delay. But I have heard you. By the way, this entire train here is closely racing each other, which is always good to see. as this has gone too wide. Is this going to stay clean? Yes, it is. Now, they tell me that I can't swear on this, which is very difficult for me to do because I happen to swear a lot. Now, Chris has a very interesting team name, which, let's just get away from that and go to Oscar, which is a very nice PG name. Good job. Much better name, in my opinion. So currently on track as well, battling are Kyle and Damien. Let's see if we can head over there, can we? We're following each other relatively closely. Although there doesn't seem to be happening too much here. The battle is in the front. As Chris Corbin is managing to keep Jonathan Zaville behind him. But Oscar is managing to keep him behind him. That's a weird sentence. So it seems to be very, very tight up here. Good racing though, nonetheless. Jonathan Zaville. I'd be quite curious to hear the opinions of the fast drivers about the new BMW. What do they think of it? I, as a peasant myself, quite enjoyed the car, as it is very forgiving, or at least in my opinion, so far it has been treating me quite nicely. Now, I'm not sure what the fastest of the fast drivers think of it. Maybe they really dislike it. Oh, as there has been a little bit of a touch there between Chris and Jonathan Zaville. Or was that Miles? I think that's Miles. As Chris has got a drive-through penalty. What's that for track limits, do you reckon? You'd love to see that Dan is managing to keep his P1 position, and he's pulled a healthy gap as well. 2 seconds. Yeah, I figured it was for track limits, which is very unfortunate. Now the battle between Oscar and Chris seems to have settled down a bit, as Chris does have to defend from behind now. And Oscar has got a drive-through as well, which is very fortunate for Chris, but very unfortunate for himself. There is no live steering, you're right. You're absolutely right. So this race, you know, was so clean from the start, but Unfortunately, penalty seems to dictate who is going to take the podium. Now, hopefully for Mr. Corbyn, he doesn't get a penalty himself, or else I don't know what to tell you. But, my word, those penalties seems to be very, very unfortunate. Now, Chris, are you going to be able to keep this position as Jonathan is going to make the move on the inside? No, he isn't. Wise man, as the corner does go to the right, so sticking it to the right side is not the wisest thing to do there. Now the upcoming corner, don't know the name, is a very good at overtaking place, but he doesn't make it there either. Oh, Chris does have a bit of a slide there. Will that matter in the end? I don't think it does, as he does seem to keep the position. As we are approaching the final lap of the race. Chris currently in the pits, serving his drive-through penalty. It's very unfortunate for both Oscar and Chris. But unfortunately, it is what it is. Now, Oscar can do his best to defend from these guys, but in the end, it doesn't really matter. As he has to serve the penalty now. Oh, and Chris goes wide and he's losing the position to Jonathan. No! What happened there, Chris? Is he going to be able to stick it on the outside there? I don't think so. Oh, that is so unfortunate. So Jonathan Seville is going to be able to take the podium away from Chris. No! Oscar says no, and he's gonna... he's not going to do the penalty, it would seem. What has happened here? So Oscar just decides to take the 30-second penalty instead of the drive-through. Which, to be honest, seems like a preferable thing to do. I don't know how long the pit lane is, to be honest. And Chris has got on a stop-go 30 penalty. I don't know how the penalty system works in this game, but it seems like if you ignore the drive-through, it will go to a stop-go 30 penalty. But for some reason, for Oscar, it didn't. I don't know how that is possible. I'm sure somebody will be able to explain that to me. So Dan Tesoro's taking P1. Josh Thompson P2. Jonathan Seville, I think, P3. Chris Corbin P4. Miles Dixon P5. And Max Simmons P6. Oh, he's got the stop-go for speeding in the pit lane. And he's gotten a 60-second penalty. That is very unfortunate for somebody that started on a pole position to get P12. Very unfortunate indeed. Server is restarting. As we are gonna be finding the new server. And I'm going to get myself something to drink. I will be back momentarily. And we're back with Spa this time. As I need to fix my little thingy. Here we go. That should do it. And it appears that instead this time Damien is on pole. My apologies. And Christopher is in P2. Look at that. So Damien very quick on the draw with this this server launch. Trolls, I don't know if you are still here, but it's currently waiting for camera definitions. I'll just give it time. Don't mess with it. It will... Oh, I was muted. I didn't know. My apologies, Selena. I didn't know I was muted.
No worries. Is the audio level okay? Stream can hear me okay?
I'm probably going to have to turn you up a bit. Let's see. Let's see if that's any better.
Okay, audio check, test, check, 1, 2.
I have just put you on 200%. That will probably fix itself.
Well, hopefully the stream will be able to hear me. Otherwise, they're just going to hear Charlie Brown's teacher. Wah, 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 wah.
Yes, we can. You're loud and clear. That's good.
Excellent. So remind me, do I need to be in the spectator view, or how's it best to see what you're seeing?
I suppose that I can stream on Discord, so you can directly see what I'm seeing. I think that's the best approach.
Okay, we'll do that. I shall jump out of the game. For those watching, you'll have to pardon us. We're still working out all the bugs of broadcasting.
It's not as easy as you might think, unfortunately.
God, if anyone thinks that you can just be like, meh, jump in the stream, let's do the thing, it's fine. It doesn't quite work that way.
A lot of it will come with experience, I'm sure.
Alright, stream view.
Yeah, Trolls, I'm not expecting anything from it in the free practice. I know that the autopilot is a bit buggy during the free practice. Although I've never seen the waiting for camera definitions. But I'm sure it's been there, just noticed it for the first time. The only thing, Selene, is you cannot see who is improving times, but there being no qualifying, it doesn't really matter. I don't suppose.
Nah, at the end of the day, we just watching them put in a few laps, get used to the car. Hopefully everyone's understanding the BMW a lot better, as we're doing the kind of the point of these community races today. Do we like the new BMW? How does it behave?
Yeah, indeed. And I haven't really driven it myself, but it seems to be very forgiving. And it seems to be a joy to drive.
Yes, on the just on the initial first race at the Nürburgring where I was driving it, it seems to be a little bit of a love child between the Aston and the Bentley, at least is how we used to view it prior to 1.8. I haven't driven the Bentley since 1.8, so I don't know if that's been a boon for it or if that's been a significant hindrance, as Damien puts it in the outside wall at Eau Rouge, or pardon me, up Radion.
He's taking the Lando Norris approach.
Yes, definitely. I suppose we'll still have the old Eau Rouge up Radion, even though it is being changed in reality. It's they're common it back a little bit because obviously there's some safety concerns between the unfortunate loss of Antoine Hubert, the big accident involving multiple drivers in the W Series, Lando Norris's crash, and a few other incidents. Oh, and Jack Aiken in the 24 Hours of Spa. So, yes, unfortunately, that's the corner's going to be reprofiled, so it's not going to be the same anymore. But an ACC will still get to enjoy it, much like we still get to enjoy the old Zandvoort. Even though I'd love to have the newer bank layout.
I'm going to restart the server as we are about to hop into the race there. As the broadcasting software has yet again gone belly up. I'm really not supposed to click it during free practice, but I was trying to change it away from a car that was just standing in the pits. Well, it seems like everybody's in the pits anyway.
Oh, there we go. That helps.
That helps a
Pop
lot.
out chat, amongst other things. All right, and I think we're back on the stream. I know you're going to have to catch up a little bit for those watching. Andy's got to cycle through the pit lane and get on board with somebody. And now we're on board with Max Don't Call Me Maxine Simmons, going through No Name.
Well, it definitely helps.
He's down at Stavelos.
It definitely helps that you know the corner names, in contrast to me that really doesn't know anything.
Well, I mean, you watch F1 long enough, you just start remembering them. And the interesting thing is, I even remember the old bus stop. I say that I'm much like the newer one.
Oh, I actually prefer the old bus stop there.
Oh, I never much cared for the old bus stop. It was, even with the F1 cars, they'd have to come to almost a complete halt, and it was just kind of like it lost some of the interest to it because it was so slow and really very tight. So it's like, even when the F1 cars got very narrow, it just, unless you were already up alongside and it was kind of behooved the driver getting past to back out, it never seemed to really work. So the newer profile, at least, is much better passing opportunity.
Yeah,
But you don't have to take my word for it. You can ask Alessandro Pierguidi, making the heroic late pass in Spa 24 Hours again. But,
it's definitely one of the overtaking opportunities currently on the track. I do have to agree with you there.
Yeah, bus stop at the end of Kemmel Strait. There's actually there's your passing opportunity there because you can get a really good run on someone, or some people, especially if you can get alongside for the Brussels hairpin, that sometimes works. And obviously, if you've got a really good toe, there's potentially Blanchiment. But I don't know, with GT3 cars especially, that can be a little difficult. There's a few attempts, but failed attempts and crashes, unfortunately, in that one, just because it's so high speed, and any aero wash, even if it's not the F1 cars that are so aero dependent, these GT3 cars can be very sensitive to it as well.
Yeah, and in Blanchiment, there's only one line, which is the quickest line, and any other line that you're going to be taking, going to, sacrifice a bit of your speed and potentially lose out into the bus stop chicane.
Yeah. Well, before 1.8, there was the thing of potential loss of speed, loss of grip, etc. But with the grip changes, it might be more feasible in that you won't get that sudden loss of grip in your tires, but it really also depends on how the aerodynamics affect it. Because it's so high speed, the sudden loss of aero might still make it fairly hazardous. But as we're watching the field go back around on the formation lap, just touching back on the M4 briefly, at least as far as my own first impressions, it's become a bit of a love child of the Bentley and the Aston. It doesn't quite have the Aston's chuck it in anywhere and it'll forgive you sort of mentality, but it is surprisingly stable, fairly forgiving, but seems, at least in my initial impressions, sets up a lot closer to the Bentley than I would say the Aston. I know.
I would agree.
As a general, of course, this is an overgeneralization, but a lot of people joke that the Aston, you plant the nose in the dirt, raise the rear end way up, and as long as it's not a particularly high down or low downforce circuit, so high speed like Monza, Paul Ricard, you can also crank on the wing, and the Aston will still perform fairly well. And having the extra rear wing obviously provides the stability of the rear end being up so high. For the BMW, you're probably looking, or the new M4, you're probably looking something close to a Bentley setup. You don't necessarily want to have a tremendous amount of rake, but again, that's probably a big difference between, say, for the Aston being primarily front load out, whereas for anyone who may not know this, much like the Bentley Continental, BMW M6, and now the M4, they're all the transaxle design. So the engine's up front, the transmission is actually behind the driver, and it's much closer, or works as part of the differential.
Yes, so from what I have heard thus far is that the Beamer, or the new M4, lacks a bit on the straights, but makes up a good chunk in the corners. It can carry quite a bit of speed through the corners, which reminds me of the Aston, and it's quite good out of the corners, which reminds me a bit of the Bentley. The Aston is not very good out of the corners. It's known to take up between 4 to 6 days to get up to speed. But the Beamer, sorry, the M4 does seem to have a very decent amount of torque, so that's very good, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yes, I think that comes from the difference, or the big difference they decided to make in the power unit. Hello to Santiago, who's just joined us in the chat, tuning in. Yes, I haven't, again, I still haven't had enough experience just because I'm having to drive the Ferrari so much between more female racers and the start of 949. But yeah, I think what we're seeing is some of the some similar traits therein. I don't think it's necessarily quite as torquey as you were saying with compared to say the Bentley, but it does carry corner speed fairly well like the Aston. Is again, because of that transaxle design, there is going to be a potential need to coax it to rotate, but at the same time, you don't want to get it too tail happy compared to something like the Aston, because with that transaxle design and the extra weight in the back, if you make it a little too tail happy, you could run into problems. And
Yes, adding to that,
also,
the new tyres, which if they do go, they go a bit more severely. You have to be very mindful of not losing your tyres too early into your stint. So it all comes into play in one way or another.
yes, it's a bit of a well, pardon the cliche, but it's a bit of a double-edged sword. It'll take them a little longer to come up to temperature in most cars, and they will hold heat better, but that, of course, that's obviously a catch-22. If you abuse your tires and overheat them, it's going to be harder to get them back into that optimal range that you want them to be in. Oh, and we're going green right now. A little bit of NASCAR-style rubbing going up our rouge.
Just to love
Steady
that.
on, lads.
Nothing
Let's
too
make it.
worrisome.
Damien pulling well away as everyone behind squabbles. I
As we're
don't
going
see any
3 wide.
deaths at the moment. Ooh, it's 3 wide after Kemmel Straight. Steady on, lads. Actually managing to get through not too badly.
Is that Gert
As
Fischer?
yes, that is Gert playing Lawnmower King, trying to engage Damien here, see if he can take the lead. Come on, Gert, keep it clean now.
Now, I know Gerda's a
of
very
course,
clean
and
driver, but very aggressive where he needs to be. Now, Chris Corbin is obviously
yep,
already
the
behind him.
battling up front has brought Chris into the mix, as well as Dan Tazaro, who makes who's obviously going to have no qualms of getting himself involved as well. And because it seems like most people have managed to make it through okay, we're going to see some rather thorough battling. I haven't noticed anyone teleporting to pits, anyone falling back drastically. Oh, Gert's way off. That'll
Gert
probably
has
be a
gone
track warning.
way off, and
Uh,
yep,
and yep, that's going to bring uh,
he
both
does
Chris
have the
Corbin
run
and
on
Dan
debut,
Tesoro
it
into
would
it.
seem.
Yes.
Ooh, as they
You
go
do have to be,
by.
oh, yep, that's going to be track violations for each of them potentially, or track limits violations. Hopefully just a warning. We don't want anyone getting drive-throughs on the first lap just trying to defend positions. That's the one thing I wish the game was able to better take into account, rather than just being like hard coding if you slide off
On the first lap, you
because
mean?
there's a yeah, well, not just on the first lap, but if you
Oh,
kind of
Chris
have a
Corbin is taken out by Chris.
tapped around. And boys, you made it through the first lap, but you got to keep it clean on the second one too. So I think that's Dan tries to get in a little bit on Chris. Maybe Chris Stevenson watching his mirrors and forgets that there's also somebody right in front of him. Let's see. We're now with Daniel from Pulse Sim Sport, following Sonky and Josh Thompson. Ooh, Sonky getting a little dangerous there, but they managed to hold it.
Ooh, as there is a bit of
And
spin, but I
out
don't know who that is.
I'm not sure, was that contact or was that just maybe getting a little too antsy on the throttle trying to
I
defend a position? I couldn't
think
quite see.
I think that was just a little moment on the exits.
Yeah. And there we go. Runner up in the Exiled series, Anders Edmondson. Hopefully he's managed to get his computer gremlin solved and we can see what he can do in the new car. As an Aston runner, it was very optimistic for him with the new car that he was able to immediately go in and start matching some of his times. So that definitely suggests that at least for some of our most talented drivers over at Turn1, that the Beamer might be a new car to definitely look at and consider for some of the main events.
I mean, I'm definitely not well trained on the BMW. I've done about 20 laps myself, but so far, oh, as
Oh,
Anders
Anders!
has a
Oh, that's
moment
unfortunate.
on the
Yeah,
exit
he's
curb.
between Anders and some of those Pulse guys. There's still no love lost from Exiled, so Anders definitely pressing to try and make a move, and unfortunately that hasn't worked out well. A lot of these guys are probably running things like just minor tweaks from default aggressive, so you might have some little instabilities and other things that you wouldn't normally have when you've had time to practice, set up the car, and really dial it in.
Yeah, I think the
But he's
majority is going
continuing
to be.
on rather than boxing.
Yes, I saw another car go into the pits, and I thought that was Anders for a second, but he seems to be ploughing on indeed. I think the majority of the people are going to be running the aggressive setup with some very minor tweaks.
Oh, as we have Jelani Patterson joining us. I didn't realize he'd snuck in. Hello, Jelani. Nice to have you joining us. We also
Jelani,
have Simone joining in this race as well. Although I think he might have been the one who got caught up on the second lap at the end of Kemmel Straight, as he's had to go through the pits, and I think he's now a lap down.
seeing Jelani is ooh, that is.
Oh dear, we've got the bodies hitting the floor now.
Seeing a Jelani on track is a bit like a solar eclipse. They are very rare but celebrated heavily.
Yes, it's nice to see him back. We was definitely one of our mainstays for events like the World Tour, and then of course life, children, and such. Took him away from us for a little while, but hopefully we'll be able to see him back more regularly now.
We're
As
always glad to see him at any rate.
yeah, yeah. So hopefully, I don't know if Mr. Auto Director will let us have a look further up front. It looks like maybe Thompson. Oh, Sankey suddenly lost a position to Williams. Wonder if there's some shenanigans going on there or further up front. Although it looks like Garrett Fisher has been pulling away. It's now opened up a 5-second gap to Oscar Sandberg. And
Indeed, he has.
yes, it's kind of makes me wonder. I mean, Garrett is certainly capable of a lot of speed and pulling away some significant gaps, but the big question is he gonna has he baked his tires in the process? Because as we were saying, the new tires they do take a little bit longer to get up to temperature, and while they do hold heat, and it's less of a concern of are you going to suddenly have temperature drop off and that sort of thing. If you do overheat them, you're going to be driving on rubber marshmallows rather quickly, especially if you keep the pressure on them versus maybe just give them a couple of laps to maybe open up a gap and then resume your straight lap times rather than those push lap times.
Yes,
But
and it's very
we'll see if that gap
noteworthy.
stays or keeps pulling.
It's very noteworthy that when the tyres do get overheated, it's very easy to. Oh, they do get very nervous, which makes it then again easier to keep overheating. So once they are overheated, it's potentially quite difficult to get them back into shape.
Yes, the exact patch note, or I don't know if this is the exact patch notes, but I'm trying to quote Aris, the lazy dev, as he's jokingly referred to, was saying that if once the tires start really overheating, they just become lazy and imprecise. So that is much akin to anyone who's also perhaps a follower of Dave Perel. Um, when the tires get really, really hot, especially using the Spanish endurance races, for example, like Catalunya, that you get the oil coming out of the tarmac, and it's almost like driving on like a combination of like bubble gum, and it's just very slick. It's very imprecise. You're fighting for grip, even though you'd think the tires would really be sticking. It's just kind of like it gets even more and more slidey and imprecise, and in many ways it really stops you from pushing. Whereas in many
Oh,
ways
Sonky.
on the flip side, on the flip side, with things being cold, drivers are probably going to notice that the tires have gotten a lot more nervous. It's easier to overcook it on the accelerator. It's very twitchy on turn in. You're going to get more bumps, shimmies, and all of those little things that tell you that the car's nervous, the tires are cold, sliding, graining, etc. So take care of your tires.
I definitely respect Kunos' decision to take real races into the fold and help them create a simulator that is as close to real life as possible. Asking those real racers to tell them how the car behaves on track and how the tyres, because the tyres in the end are the only four patches between you and the tarmac. How they behave during a race is a fundamental part of making a realistic simulator, in my opinion. So
Yes, exactly. And I think part of that too was we would see, especially in certain events, a lot of alien drivers were using what's often referred to as alien setups, the setups that most people would find far too twitchy and loose to be able to drive, but they could really use things like the slip angle and just do things with the car that the mere mortals couldn't do. And in many ways, they've with the 1.8 patch, it's the reason they've kind of brought that back a little bit and changed some of the physics is you'd never run a setup like that in real life, especially it's one thing to do it in a hot lap for say 5 laps at most. Go out, warm up the tires, do your hot lap, and come back in. But some of those alien teams were running these for 65-minute stints for 6, 8, 10, 12-hour races, and in reality, it's just not feasible. So it was good to have the real life racers come in and say, maybe we better dial that back and other things, and also make the tire model a little more realistic, because you just wouldn't be able to feasibly do that kind of pushing over that period of time, because you again, coming back to the tire temperatures thing, all of that rear end sliding, you would just bake those rears. And when obviously prior to 1.8, you it was kind of there were those who had enough talent to kind of abuse the old tire system, whereas now they've kind of lost a little bit of that, and we got to make them a little more honest.
Yeah, I think the overall difference between the aliens and the mere mortals has been closed a bit, but we'll see.
And speaking of the mere mortals, a couple of our most prominent silver drivers, Kirk Heath and Max Simmons, having a lovely little joust. And looks like Kirk right now has the better of Max, even though there's a little bit of
very, very close.
Is he going to try and pull it around the outside of Brussels? Nope, he doesn't quite have the real estate. So now if Kirk gets a good exit out of No Name here, it's going to be tough for Max to send it up until probably to Stavelo corners. Let's see. Oh, Kyle Sisko having a little battle with Seville.
As Max Simmons was trying to overtake Kirk Heath, he immediately had Dan breathing down his neck, so that is definitely something that he could have keep an eye open for as we see that unfold.
Exactly. Yeah, and we're seeing Kyle Sisko, Damien Yearwood, and Seville having a little three-way battle. Looks like Seville's managed to get around those two. Although for an exiled champion, I'm sure that he'd definitely be able to make those moves sooner rather than later.
Oh, I'm sure. I think he was held up.
Kyle's got a nice run on Damien at the moment. Let's see if he's got the real estate to make the move into the bus stop. Ooh, not quite. Had a pretty good run. I'm surprised he wasn't able to maintain it. Perhaps the BMW is experiencing a little bit of aero wash through the fast left-hander at Blanchimont. But now we're back over to Max Simmons, Kirk Heath, and Dan Tesaro. See if Dan decides to be brave and fire it up.
He does go a bit wide there.
There might be track limits there. And they're just doing three-way tow. Kirk's defending the inside, so Max would have to hang it around the outside, but he would have... Oh, not quite. He wasn't a little far
the inside now. Oh, very, very inside.
Yeah, I think Dan just overcooked it a little bit there and won't have the run through Russell's hairpin into No Name. So they're going to stand pat for a little while. And Damien and Kyle might still be battling away, but Max is actually pulled right back in for Pouan. And let's see. Kirk's trying to defend the racing line. Dan is definitely trying to see if he can pressure Simmons into a mistake. Although Max continually seems to get the run on Kirk, but never gets gets the position. It's got to actually get up alongside, otherwise,
Yeah, the defending so
he
far has
can't
been
force his way through.
absolutely on point, and it's very easy for people to get close to one another, but then actually making the overtake stick is another story, so it would seem. As Jonathan Seville does have the run into Blanchimont currently.
Yeah, well, he'll definitely be able to make that pass. It looks like Damiao's got a little bit of front damage, so that that bonnet flapping in the breeze will definitely make it difficult for him to maintain top speed. So, unfortunately, at this point of the track, he's just going to be a bit of a sitting duck, unfortunately. And we're back up with number 1, Jelani. If only just for a moment. Although he has seemed to have caught up to the almost 5-car battle for 6th, with Kirkheath up front, Max Simmons, Dan Tesoro, pardon me if I butcher your name, Hosvik. I do apologize for butchering that, Jelani Patterson, and then of course Dixon from Pulse, who apparently has just pitted. I wonder if was caught out by some shenanigans.
He has been in a little incident into the bus stop earlier, and he was letting the car by. I don't know who it was exactly.
Yes, I wonder if perhaps the damage just got to be a little bit too much, or ended up making a mistake. But we shall see. Thompson about just shy of 4/10 behind Sandberg for the battle for P2, and it's almost hard to take eyes off the battle as Max Simmons tries to make the move around the outside of Kirkheath, and Geert Fischer just checking out the gap between him and Oscar Sandberg is up to 10 seconds now.
Yeah, Gert seems to be pulling away quite healthily.
Yep, he's just going to go ahead and run away with it. And if we maybe move back to Oscar, we'll see if where he is in relation to Josh. And
oh, that was a second half.
Trying to fire it around the outside. Unfortunately, you're going to have one hell of an exit to be able to pull that one off, especially on someone as feisty as Oscar.
Yeah, if anything, Oscar is going to make you fight like hell for it to overtake him on the track.
So those two are having themselves a little tussle. We still got the 4-way battle for P6, 6th place, or P6. Choose your poison. Kirk's still defending fairly well, and as Simmons not able to make the move, and Cesaro and Hausvik is still holding station. As Daniel Williams is kind of in a land of his own. He's still got ways up to, or almost a second to get to Thompson, and has about, or pardon me, that's a 6-second gap, and then 4 seconds behind him, Sonky. So he just gets to probably sail home here in this last 20 seconds of this race. Well, 20 seconds on the timer plus the last lap.
Yeah, there's going to be a lap margin between the time falling, I think. Yeah, so there's going to be a lap and a half after the flag falls, or the timer goes to 0 rather.
So maybe let's jump back to the battle for P6, because it looks like everyone's kind of just assumed a little bit of a gap, but we'll see if maybe Max and...
I was letting the autopilot do its thing, but it didn't want to show the actual battle, unfortunately.
What's the deal, autopilot? You're not following the good stuff. But we're now with the battle over P6. It's getting very close.
Oh, as
No,
there
with it
has
being
been
last lap.
oh my word.
Yeah, I think maybe, was it Dan Cesaro got a little bit nervous and lost it. Or yeah, it looks like he lost it on zone. It doesn't seem like he got tapped or took anyone with him.
So that
But
appears
if
that
we
Kirk
move,
Heath is then going to take P6, P7.
yep, no, it should be
Oh,
P6. He's
and then
trying
he's
to
going
block off
to lose it
Max
around
Simmons,
the outside.
but that might give the position to, is that Jelani Patterson? No, I
Halsich.
don't think so.
Halsich.
Yeah, it looks like that little tussle there at the end, trying to defend the inside, is let Hausvik through. So final standing will be Garrett Fisher a mile ahead. Oscar Sandberg, Josh Thompson, Daniel Williams, Sonky B, Hausvik, Heath, Simmons, Seville, and Amundsen, your top 10, followed by Damiayo, Dan Tesoro, Mandeville, Kyle Sisko, Damian Yearwood, uh, wow, Owen Wilson, Simone Capelli, Jelani Patterson, Chris Stevenson, Dixon, and Taylor. Right, looks like Seville's putting on a little drifting clinic after the flag.
I mean, as you do, to be honest.
Yes, everyone's got their interesting post-race celebration, and some people that's either the 360, the drifting, burnouts, donuts.
People are asking for another one. Are we going to do another one?
Looks like they might do another one for Kielami or Silverstone, Imola. There's definitely some chat requests going on. We'll see if maybe we do one more.
It's up to Chris.
Well, you're in the chat there, Andy. Maybe tell him yeah, let's do one more. We seem to be having some a lot of fun here, and now that the guys managed to keep it clean through that first lap, maybe we'll have a couple more close fights, because these BMW test races are actually getting pretty spicy in the good way.
So it does appear that a lot of people want to do another one. I'm definitely down, because the races tonight have been very, very tight and very, very exciting, with a lot of very close battles.
You'll have to excuse me just for a few moments, Andy and viewers. I'm actually going to jump out of my rig and sit in the more comfortable chair for the next race. So
Sounds
pardon me
like a
for
good
just
idea.
a moment.
Now, Oscar the Mad Lad is voting for Snetterton. I don't think that is a track that is loved by many, although I might be wrong, just because I dislike it myself.
The interesting thing with Snetterton is, well, obviously there's it was modeled when they still had the monster tree, when the track was rendered and put in the game, because it was from the 2019 season. Unfortunately, the tree had to be removed. I believe it was struck by lightning or something like that. But it's for those fans of the Grand Tour and that particular somewhat suggestive track that Clarkson and Abby Eaton had their snow race on. Some people will accuse Snetterton of having similar traits, shall we say. Personally, of the new British DLC tracks, so if we remove Silverstone and Brands Hatch because they were from the base game, I would I would almost have to say, as Jonathan Seville was saying there, Alton Park just is kind of would be my favorite, just because it is the epitome of the British track, bumpy and undulating and narrow and just generally quite mental. Yes, Trolls, that is Jelani Racing.
It is indeed.
Is he allowed to do that? I would assume so. I don't hear Andy banging on the keyboard, although he might be banging on the furnace. A little pop culture reference for everyone there.
My apologies. My keyboard is rather loud.
So,
I will
are we
refrain from typing. I promise.
Yes. So are we jumping over to a different server?
I'm gonna guess that we are. Let me double check with the rest.
Looks like Oscar's decided to do a few donuts at the pit lane exit while we're waiting.
Yeah.
According to Chris Stevenson, there will be an encore, one more race, slightly longer practice time to allow everyone to join.
Cool.
I did my the one race at the home of Turn1 at the Nürburgring to try out the new BMW to get a decent first impression. Considering I don't think me doing my MFR setup test during the midst of the BMW races was particularly popular, so I figured it was a good time to join you in the booth. By the way, everyone, that's a pun because Andy's last name is Booth.
Yes, yes, AJ. The translation screen is there, although the delay is quite long. Community race on Paul Ricard. Look at that.
We're doing Paul Ricard?
Apparently so.
Dear God. Well, this would be a good place to see just how fast the BMW can go if anyone's interested in doing.
And Grant has joined.
Yeah. Grant has joined. Looks like somebody might have joined in the wrong BMW.
Is this... Hold up.
I think somebody was accused of being in the M6. Oh no, that's an Aston Martin.
Ban him.
Banish.
For the next time, I will be more snappy with transition screens. And it's raining as well. Look.
Yep. Are we back to live pictures on the stream? It looks like we're going from damp to rain in 10 minutes, but by the time we're back to the race, it should be back to dry. So a little curveball here for the participants in that their practice, they'll probably have to do it on the wet tires with the track state being damp, unless of course enough of them get out and do enough drying of the track prior. We're seeing Max Simmons do some early reconnaissance laps.
As he's about to start his first fast lap. Flying lap, I should say.
Yes. Now the question is, how will the guys set up the car for this race? Are they going to maybe take the gamble and try and set it up for max speed on what would potentially be a dry track, or are they going to maybe play something more like an intermediate setup where the track might still have moisture, or it could be raining in the session, and gamble that even though it's supposed to be or it is rain right now. It's going to intensify in 10 minutes, but by the time the test session ticks over, are we going to see a situation where it might still be damp on the track, but with no more rain? Is it going to be a situation where the track will start drying, and do they want to gamble that it's going to stay wet enough to run a wet setup, or at least wet tires,
Now,
or perhaps risk it for the chocolate biscuit and go for dry tires
do you
and
think?
really put a big test on this brand new M4?
Now, do you think that when the practice is wet and it goes to qualifying, for example, that it remembers the previous weather, or is it just completely random? Because I think it's the latter, and the weather doesn't
It's
necessarily have to do anything with the previous settings, sessions.
that, well, that's really going to depend on the actual server configuration, because if this session moves over, so server time, it's 12:04 p.m. If that session ticks over and it's immediately right after, then obviously it's going to move from raining to overcast. However, if Stevo has this server set up that this session is not for another hour, there's a possibility that the game will simulate, okay, well, it's been overcast and heating up and the track's dried.
Okay.
So that's really going to depend. And what you might end up having is situation where the guys might say, gamble that, okay, well, it's going to be wet, we're going to be moving into the session right away, and turns out that maybe
Oh,
Steve-O
seizures.
punched a small error in, and it's actually an hour, and the track is then suddenly dry, and all their data's gone out the window.
Gotcha. Okay. Currently, nobody has set a lap yet, but hopefully, we will see some lap times complete.
It looks like some of the guys are bouncing back and forth, maybe trying to figure out how this car is going to behave. Oh, Grant doing a little bit of a drift, heading down the Mistral Straight, getting on the power maybe a little bit early, but having doing the lovely little side slip before hitting down. Very theatrical.
Now, I know Grant has quite a bit of experience in the older BMW, and
He was very much a fan of the M6, so it'll be interesting to see how he feels about the new M4.
exactly.
It does carry, as I was saying earlier, the transaxle design, so it might have somewhat similar feelings, although um, it's not. It is, believe it or not, longer. Although I don't believe it carries the same amount of weight. It's definitely a smaller engine, but it is much more highly tuned, being a turbo engine, smaller block. So in many ways probably has somewhat similar mantra from the 2015 to the 2018 Bentley, in that let's save some weight.
I don't know
Although
the exact dimensions, but I was told that the engine was the same, albeit.
the engine of the Bentley, I believe, remained the same, but for the BMW, I think they went from the big 4.4, 4.5 twin turbo V8 from the M6 to I can't remember if it's a V6 or an inline six, but I know it is a smaller engine that is a little more highly strung. But actually, let's before we say that, let's give me a moment to jump for jump over and do a little bit of fact checking here to make sure we give everyone correct information. So the audience is yours for a moment there, Andy.
Copy that. As we have our first timed lap in from Jelani, which is a 206.7. Which seems to be about a second slower than you would normally be on the older patch.
Okay, this just in. Here's your headlines for the new M4 GT3. So for the engine, they decided to go with, as I suspected, straight six engine, which is 40 kilos worth of weight savings versus the 4.4 liter V8 from the M6. And compared to, I believe, the S58, no, that's the M4 competition engine. My apologies. So yes, it is straight six versus the older M6 having a V8. And it is, I believe, gracious, so much
So much information.
so much engineering ease, and I don't know how much is worth sharing with you. Here we go. Actual spec sheet. Okay, so 3 liters, straight six, turbo, obviously. They're saying output about 590 brake horsepower. Obviously, there's going to be minor tweaks and adjustments based on BOP, real world versus the game, of course. And as I was saying, I believe the actual wheelbase might actually be longer than
It is, I think,
the
by
M6.
about 4 centimeters. Don't quote me on that, but I think those are somewhere close to the actual numbers. But that being said, from at least in my perspective, the car doesn't feel too sluggish like the old M6 used to. It was not very nimble, especially on the higher end chicanes or the mid end chicanes, such as the Nürburgring. Struggled quite a bit, and the Beamer or the M4. I keep saying the Beamer. The M4 seems to be handling those nimble corners quite well.
Yes, it does seem to be handling much better, and I think that's a large portion in part for the weight savings. And also, I don't know exactly how the aerodynamic performance has changed, but the big thing with the M6 is that it was very much reliant on its under tray for its downforce and whatnot. So you wanted to make sure you were getting the proper airflow underneath the car, and I think in certain cases to really maximize that under tray downforce, you had to really be cognizant of things like your rake angles and whatnot. So that's where you might see a drop off in the amount of low speed rotation, where some of that nimbleness goes away. But for some other interesting little factoids about the new M4, the transaxle design and transmission are obviously some of the highlights, but it is actually, believe it or not, that transmission is a further development of the M8 GTE car. So it is an interesting development in that it is the M4, which is the, shall we say, I'm hesitant to say smaller because the wheelbase is longer, but
The
the
in
four being
between.
yes, it's being the perhaps just designated for engine displacement. I'm not up on all of BMW's naming nomenclature, but the smaller engine with it being the inline-six, but carrying a wheelbase even longer than the now retiring M6, but having the transmission of the absolute beast M8 GTE.
The M8 that sparked the big boy memes a couple of years ago. No, that was the textbook definition of a Godzilla car.
Speaking of which, with the inline-six that BMW is running for this car compared to, for example, the twin-turbo V6 in the Nissan, it would be interesting to see how the two of those compare, with them being shall we say, running a very smaller but very high-strung engine. Much this it'd be interesting to see how that compares, as we've seen a lot of the GT3s love that approx 4-liter twin turbo V8 that we're seeing, for example, in Bentley, is in the Ferrari, and Aston was slated to, or is in a few of the GT4 cars. Mercedes obviously stuck with the big 6.3 liter for their GT3s, but they are providing that engine for Aston Martin. And but yes, with the Honda and Godzilla being smaller V6 twin turbo engines, it'd be interesting to see how BMW is going to compare, deciding to go very much with that smaller but more highly strung engine rather than increased displacement.
Yes, I definitely think that it's a different. Well, it obviously is a different approach to what the norm has been for a couple of years now. But hopefully for
And
them, it pans out the way they want it to, and it's a car that's going to be able to compete with
mhm.
names such as the Porsche.
Yes, well, the Porsche is actually one of the more interesting ones. Because when you think about what the Volkswagen Group has brought to the SRO, they have the Audi program with the R8, which has been around for a while, running the I think it's something like 5-liter V10. So going with in very much that larger, high revving, naturally aspirated engine in the R8, and obviously in the Lamborghini, because it's also part of the Volkswagen Group. So going with that kind of traditional, almost F1 style method of generating power. The the Bentley being the 4-liter twin turbo, and then there's of course the Porsche, which is probably the smallest of the naturally aspirated engines, and it's obviously running the Boxer configurations, so very much a test bed of the different VW Group technologies, but also very different methodologies. And you can you could see kind of all three of them on display, and it's very interesting. But it was very much a Japanese manufacturer trait to go with smaller block that's much more highly tuned, whereas now with BMW deciding to go that similar route, maybe there's some definite reason to go there.
Yeah, they must something that we don't, which is often the
Yeah.
case with these engineers. Let's be honest.
Mm, yeah.
Um,
The boffins have flexed the gray matter and decided there's definitely something here.
Now, the normal approach, as you've mentioned before, with the Honda and the Porsche, is that the cars are quite small compared to the M6 or the M4 even. Um, so it's
Um,
definitely
yes, yes. In the case of the Honda is actually a very interesting story, because it's one of the few cars that's been adapted from a hybrid design. So they're having to take out the electronic units and run it strictly on its petrol engine. So they're kind of having to make up for a number of things. So that's why, at least as far as ACC is concerned, you're seeing a situation where the BOP is just honestly not very kind to the Honda or Acura, as it's known in North America, in just in that it's the balance of performance tends not to favor it, with the exception of some of the intercontinental tracks, and possibly what looks like Circuit of the Americas being teased. Perhaps COTA will be a little bit of a renaissance for the Honda,
now that's a very
because
interesting point that you bring up because I know for a fact that during the IMSA races or the North American series, the Honda or the Acura is actually quite competitive, unlike the European counterpart. So
yes,
hopefully,
Also, there is at least one or two prominent Acura Honda teams in SRO's GT World Challenge America. So there is a
That's good.
possibility that if Kunos is going to bring, well, we're pretty sure they're bringing Kota, but also if they do decide to bring a few more of the North American tracks, will the Honda find itself being more relevant again in the future?
The SRO North American. That's the name I was after. I couldn't think of it. Thank you. Yeah, but yeah, definitely very
And
interesting.
may I just point out Josh Thompson, who we're seeing doing some practice laps, went for the racing name Boring Racing. Hopefully, hopefully it won't be a boring race coming up. I know that the past few races have been rather spicy, so let's hope boring isn't the direction we're going to go. And Oscar's helmet and racing suit making our eyes bleed as per usual. And going from internal to the Wang view. It's Josh Thompson in the boring racing BMW. Hopefully we'll thank you for the clarity, trolls. Beamer is the M6, Bimmer is the M4.
I can live with that.
Then Josh getting a little sideways. Just enough drama to make it interesting, but not enough to lose the car.
I'm going to be right back for 2 seconds. I'm going to get a drink. So I will be right back.
Okay. So as we're watching Josh just maneuver his way through the tight bits of Paul Ricard right before the Mistral Straight. And it'd be interesting to see just how fast some of these cars have managed to get down that back straight. It's obviously the old M6 was known for having a particularly high level of power in this section of the track, but the question is, does the M4 keep that straight line prowess, or does it give it some of it up to be more maneuverable? It's, Josh now going through the fast right-hander. Be interesting to see. People been setting up the car to be able to take this section of corners fast in the wet, or if they try to just keep it sliding a little bit wide, maybe trying to keep it just under control for sighting laps during free practice, but then if there's any chance of the session going dry for the race, maybe they're in for um, some extra speed when if the track does indeed dry up. All right, and we're now sitting on the grid. Looks like the rain is still coming
Wet
down.
conditions ahead.
All right, and since Andy's gone and gotten himself something to drink while we're still waiting for that 90 seconds or so, I will turn you over to Andy for a few moments and go get a drink myself. I shall be right back.
So, wet conditions indeed. Uh, this this is the first wet race of the evening, and hopefully it will spice things up even more. Now we know that the past 3 races have been very spicy, with a lot of very close battles all round, and hopefully the wet will increase this even more. Such as the nature of rain in Assetto Corsa, most of the time, will with still no qualifying, so it's still the order of the people and the way they joined. So it seems that Oscar is on pole, and here's an interesting one. Anyone that could potentially challenge Oscar is quite a bit back. Now, dare I say that Oscar might pull away from the rest here a little bit. Now, during the rain, of course, your fuel consumption will be less. So that means that the cars are able to bring less fuel as well. Will that change the way they drive? I don't know. As we are beginning our formation lap, that was the word I was looking for. Let's see who can start the race and who can start pulling away. So the conditions... Now here's an interesting fact. It does go dry in about 10 minutes, according to the little thing. Now, will the track dry up in time for the end of the race? Because then it could mean that potentially there will be some pit stops, which again will spice the things up.
Interestingly, what we're seeing right now as the cars are doing their formation lap, as Andy just pointed out, yes, it is going to dry, but keep in mind it's not going to be stopping at the 10-minute mark of the race, because time is still ticking away on the server at this point. So in approximately 10 minutes real world time, that rain's going to stop. And when you look at all the spray and the amount of cars on track, there's a definite possibility that in less than 10 minutes, once the rain stops, that all of a sudden all of that rain is going to start getting brought up, shot off the racing line. We're going to see a racing line form. So obviously things are going to start drying, and the question is somebody actually going to take that gamble and try and switch it to dries, or are people perhaps thinking about the fact that it is going to dry up and it probably won't necessarily get dry enough for the slicks, but in fact run some under pressure dries and hope that they won't absolutely bake those tires and make it to the end?
Now, I have been in this scenario, I don't know about you, but it was a Spa race where we started in the rain and it got dry very, very soon, very, very fast. And I'm secretly hoping that somebody did take the gamble and started on slicks, expecting the track to dry up, and gambling that he doesn't have to make the pit stop. Now, this is a huge gamble, and very risky.
With the track state wet, that's probably the gamble of starting on slicks is probably maybe a little bit too big a roll of the dice, just because with 20 cars and the size of Paul Ricard, it might not necessarily get dry enough that your slicks would phase in. Because honestly, I've been in that situation before, running a race in the Bentley around Paul Ricard, and because I'd done a wet race and was expecting the track eventually to make its way, because the rain was going to stop, making its way to greasy and potentially to green, but unfortunately that transition point never came. It never got drier than damp, and that was with far more questions than there were here. So, or more cars than there were here, and so I think that there's definitely a possibility that drivers, the risky strategy might go with under pressure your wets for the start, and then hope you don't overbake them, as opposed to trying to do something really brave like start on the dries.
No, I definitely don't think it's likely, but I'm still hoping for it as we go green. And everybody seems to get away nice and tidy. Kyle seems to let everybody past. Maybe he has gone on the slicks and thinks to himself, I'm not going to take anybody out. I'm just going to drive my race and see where it ends.
I'm not seeing the characteristic side label for the dries, so perhaps not. As far as specifications rules, I've think I sort of answered your question. The wheelbase is definitely longer. I don't know about
There is
wider
a
or
pulse
higher.
car
Oh,
standing the
multi-car
wrong way.
collision as they all tangle into the slow double right before the Mistral straight. Thankfully, with it being a slow corner, hopefully people will have escaped that relatively unscathed. But yes, with
That,
a lot of the wings are flat profile, so people are probably hoping for some definite straight line speed. And it looks like Dan Tesoro has teleported to the pits, so perhaps a little bit of critical damage, maybe deciding to go back into the garage and gambling on
now, to
dry tires.
answer AJ's questions, nobody would. Nobody in their right mind would. But there was still a part of me hoping that somebody might, just in case it did go dry. But I don't measure it lightly.
Moving up to 12th position, or it says 17th for some reason there, but looks like he's running in 12th, Keith, or perhaps has dropped back after those after that first lap incident into the slow double right. Wilson now has changed to Oswine. I'm not sure if that's perhaps
Oh,
a real name or
Grant is
just
having a
changing
little
it from.
moment.
Actually, a few of them running the default livery, so hopefully we're calling the correct names, but a few drivers are running the default BMW livery, so we do apologize if there's any mix-up.
You're all Bob in my eyes. I'm going to be honest.
As we see Jonathan Seville trying to chase down Grant Willamot, who's going to have some rather significant tow, but also a face full of spray as they come down the Mistral Straight. Approaching, as they're about to approach the fast right-hander with Dixon, Simmons, Thompson, Hosvik, Willamont, Seville, Sandberg, Stevenson, Wilson, and Mandeville, your top 10. And actually, Sinan has moved up quite significantly. I think he started at the back because he joined the server late.
Yes.
And he managed to capitalize on some of the opening chaos.
Yep, keep your nose clean and profit in the process. Which seems to have worked quite nicely for him. And hopefully we'll be able to see a bit of a battle between Sinan and Gert Fischer, as they currently are in scraps for that top 10 position. Well, P11, I would say.
So your specifications rules, and they don't. There's no offhand comparison to the M6, but wheelbase of 5,020 millimeters, width 2,040 millimeters, height is obviously variable, but base height 1,308 millimeters with a wheelbase of 2,917 millimeters. I do not know how that compares to the M6.
Now, I'm quite curious
the rain
to
now
see what
has
condition.
now stopped.
Yeah.
And we can actually start seeing that dry line forming.
It happens so quickly.
Yeah. And there's just a hint of it right now. The cars are probably going to need a lap or two to really kick up that water and move it aside. But now the question becomes is, because the track state is still wet, how long will it take for it to transition to damp, and then will it further transition to greasy and possibly even green in in time for somebody to decide maybe we should go for slicks.
Now, it's going to be a very interesting period of time because, you know, the cold tyres are more nervous than they are up to temperature. And I'm not sure how the wet tyres fare when they're overheating as well. So this is...
Oddly enough, when it comes to overheating, oddly enough, the wet tires will fare better overheating in the circumstances where you'd start seeing, we do a little bit of a momentary tapper bump draft between Thompson and Seville, or yes, that would be Thompson and Seville. Yes, even though you might have start seeing excessive heat and overinflation with the wet tires, they'll tend to hang on a little bit longer, especially if you can find some offline moisture to cool them down and whatnot. You can stretch those out significantly longer until there's that crossover point where no matter what you do to try and maintain speed with the wets, obviously the slicks just keep gaining pace. So there are probably people who will be checking their MFD to see when that potential time shift happens, and if suddenly someone puts in a stonking lap, then it might be, oh well, they've possibly gone to slicks and they're going faster. But as things stand right now, track state is still wet, and even though the weather widget says that the sun is starting to come out, we're not seeing a situation where the track state has started to change.
Well, it can go very, very quick. Once the sun is out, it can go to optimum in less than 5 laps. I have seen it go that fast in a couple of races. But so far, there is no crossover yet.
Yeah, as of right now, just because there's only 17 cars on track right now, and we're not seeing much in the way of wind condition change. There's probably a good chance that we might see it eventually transition to damp, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to get to the point where you're going to see slicks become viable. Right now, I think we're going to just see a situation where it's who's picked the right pressures. As we see somebody go around in the back, I think that was Thompson.
That must have been, yeah. So Grant takes P2.
As looks like Simmons has been swallowed up by Willamette and Dixon.
Well, there are 2 drive-through penalties for both Oscar, who started on pole, and the name that I'm unable to pronounce.
It looks like for those 2, that's probably track limits. It's very easy to get track limits drive-throughs at Paul Ricard.
I see.
Especially like that first turn leading onto the Mistral Straight, and also at the exit, it's very easy to run wide. It's possible those 2 decided to set the car up perhaps for slightly drier conditions, hoping to get some extra top speed, and just in those first few laps they just weren't having the grip to be able to make that turn.
That is very likely, as this is currently a train and a half.
We're seeing Miles Dixon leading the race with Grant Willamette right behind. Obviously, Max would like his race lead back, but with drivers like Dixon and Willamette being some of the best from Pulse and Turn 1 respectively, this might be a battle that is just a little too high level for Max, as Seville now overtakes Simmons and wants to get
in on the battle.
Mix.
Yep.
And maybe we're seeing a little bit of that situation of slightly better offline grip, as Kunos promised, with Grant managing to be able to hold on slightly offline. And now it seems like he might even have the run on Dixon.
Now, overtaking into turn 1 is not an easy task, I have found. But still.
No, it gets more and more undulating as you get further to the outside, and that exit curve, it is easy to wash wide and eventually give yourself track limits. So the important thing here is you're either wanting to make sure you're up alongside and have some slightly better braking into that turn, or have better exit, although it's going to be tough as we're starting to definitely see a racing line form now. And there's definitely some drying going on, and as we're seeing, some of the guys are even stepping offline slightly, maybe going for straight up wet pressures, and as a result they're now in a situation where they're wanting to give those tires a bit of a cool down and preserve them a little bit longer. Although now it seems like maybe even with Seville managing to pass Willamette, we might even see a situation where the Pulse guys decide to go for it. And well, if there's one rule of motorsport, make sure you don't take out your teammate.
Now, this rule doesn't apply to Oscar Sundberg. He just he doesn't take lightly to that rule. I'm joking. No, but it's definitely beneficial to have.
As the Pulse guys get a little unsettled as Seville manages to take the lead on Dixon, although I don't think he'll want to keep his bragging rights in the team and try to fight it right back.
No, and it's definitely beneficial to have a 1-2 of a team defending against the sole turn 1 car, although Max currently isn't driving for turn 1.
Well, the big thing that they'll want to do now, especially assuming that tap that Grant had given Dixon earlier hasn't damaged his straight line speed too much, but he'll probably be hoping that either the two of them will tangle, or maybe even he can bring it back. But realistically speaking, if they're trying to if they were trying to play the team game, Max probably should have let Grant go right away when it was obvious he had a run on him, rather than fighting it out.
Yeah, well, it's very easy to not realise what's going on once you're in the car and there's nobody to tell you, like, hey, we're currently fighting for a potential P1. Maybe not fight each other. And above all, it's a fun race. I don't think team orders are going to be an issue here.
In a community race like this, it's
no, for sure.
Team orders are much less of a thing. There's very little chance of any sort of should we say hierarchical strategies. It's more just to have a chance. Oh, as Fisher's sent around by it looks like Kirk got a little inside him, and some extra sportsmanship there. Let Gert resume the position, and might have just given himself a track limits warning going outside the bollards there.
Well, the track limits are very forgiving in the rain, and if you're not on full throttle when you're off track, supposedly the game is quite lenient. So I'm hoping for him that
supposedly more forgiving in the rain, although
well, this definitely
something
doesn't
like
help.
that.
Has he got a drive-through? Look at that.
Yep, it looks like he's got himself a drive-through for going particularly wide, as the track states definitely made the transition to damp. So we're going to see more offline running, trying to quench tires. And is that Willamette managing to make a pass on Dixon? It looks like it is.
It is so.
Grant's managed to make himself move, and now he's going to hopefully try and go back after Seville. And then the question becomes just who manages to take care of these slowly warming wet tires. Yep, as Grant goes offline to cool things down and doing a little bit of slipstream braking, going back and forth. And looks like these, yep, protecting the inside, then going back off or back towards the racing line to be able to optimize the corner, and making it obviously a lot more difficult for Dixon to be able to make the move on him, and that brings Max Simmons back into the equation.
And Gerd Fischer has got a stop-go 30. What happened there?
Probably overcooking it into the pit lane, hoping to minimize the time loss, and because that's something the game takes care of, and he's unfortunately gone and gotten himself from a position of just having a drive-through to now having a stop-go 30.
Well, from personal experience, the Paul Ricard pit entry is not necessarily the easiest. It's very short, so it's very easy to accidentally make a mistake there.
Yeah. Yes, it's one of those tricky ones where you have to pull offline and be on the brakes rather quickly, because the entryway is so short compared to, for example, the much longer one that you see in Formula One. But the benefit is obviously you can just immediately finish the final corner, aim straight, have your indicator on in advance so that the other drivers know. You can immediately just pull offline, hit the brakes, and you're there. The downside is because you have so little space, you can easily overcook it into the pits, and thankfully we've not seen any situations where somebody immediately tries to cover over to the right and plows into the back of somebody trying to pit, but that is, after all, what your indicators are for.
That's a very good point. And as we just find out that Miles Dixon and Max Simmons both have got a penalty as well.
Drive through again for track limits, probably taking one too many liberties at certain corners, as Chris Stevenson and Kirk Heath battle away. Although this battle has a 6-second gap to Chris Corbin, who seems to be off on his own. There's a significant gap between him and Van der Rud, and then back to Heath. So having a bit of an uneventful race with a minute and a half to go. But as it stands right now, it looks like it's going to be Seville followed by Willamette, because Seville has managed to pull 5 seconds on Grant because of the battling. Although I don't foresee Dixon will be able to hang in there. He probably has 3 laps to serve the drive-through, so might try to keep going and hope to just take the time penalty. Although with Paul Ricard being such a short pit lane, it might be worth just taking the drive-through.
Yeah, I think with 1.5 laps to go, I definitely think that taking the drive-through is the way to go. Me personally would much rather just take the drive-through instead of...
Seville having a little bit of a moment there.
Yeah, he went a bit wide into the final corner there, and
surrenders that position to
Jack Taylor has got the run.
Yep, Jack Taylor. Yeah, well, with an exit like that, if anyone just staying or managing to keep it on the racing line, they're going to definitely have the run on you. But yeah, we now have 4 cars with drive-throughs, probably for track limits, plus Fisher, who's just holding on to his stop-go 30, obviously, with the timer now completely empty. We're on the last lap of the race.
So there's been another penalty from Chris Corbin.
Yep, looks like everyone's going to take their whatever it ends up being. I think it's a 2 minutes added to your time or something like that.
But if everybody does the same, then it all equals out for the people that took the penalty anyway.
yes, a lot of that stuff will balance out, but we'll see where it ends up going.
And Gerd Fisher was
Although
facing the other way. I think that was Gerd Fisher.
it looks like he's taken the opportunity to just park himself and
Well, it is
watch as
called the
the
parking
cars
lot,
go
after
through.
all.
Yes. Parking lot, the airfields. Heard a few interesting nicknames, colorful nicknames for Paul Ricard. But track has now finally migrated its way to Greasy, so this is where you would definitely see the slicks become optimum. But with checkered flag flying, there's no point in changing your tires because the race is over. So Seville comes home P1, followed by Willamette, Dixon, Simmons, Thompson, Sandberg, Hausvik, Wilson, Taylor, Mandeville, Vanderad, Corbin, Heath, Stevenson, Cisco, and Fisher. Although the order is probably
30
going to
seconds will
change.
be added.
Yeah, 30 seconds being added for those who have not taken their drive-through penalty. So it looks like Wilson dropped down a few places as a result, but seems that because of the gap, Dixon and Simmons haven't been moved down all that much. So, but perhaps we'll
I
see if
think
anything
it will
changes when all
only
the cars finish.
display after, yeah. This is still without taking the 30 seconds into account.
Yes, it looks like we're going to have to wait for perhaps Cisco and Fisher to either be finish or be timed out by the session. And Cisco crosses the line.
Now, I've said it before. This is definitely a moment to screenshot because you don't often see Kyle drive anything other than the Lexus. So take the opportunity where you can.
Right, and session has ticked over, so Seville, Willamette, Thompson, Sandberg, P4 has moved up. Ausvik P5, Dixon has dropped to 6th, Simmons 7th, Taylor in 8th, Mandeville 9, Vanderrod rounding out the top 10, Heath, Stevenson, Wilson, Corbin, and Cisco 11 through 15. Then 16th place, Gert Fisher, Sonky V 17th, Jelani Patterson 18th, Damiano 19th, and DNFing, we have Dan Tazaro. Although I'm not sure why Seville is in 2 spots. Oh, right.
He
That
changed
would be his.
cars.
Yes, he popped in the Aston, and obviously small game glitch leaves Seville in 2 spots as Cisco trying to put on a drift clinic and ends up getting a little too
There's simply too much
crazy.
grip into those tyres.
And oh, we might even get a second encore. Server admin Chris Stevenson asking if we're having an encore or a second encore, and we already have
Unfortunately
one
for
vote for
me,
yes.
I'm going to have to call it after this one because I have to pick someone else up.
Well, as Kyle gets a little crazy with the extra drifting, so yes, if looks like we might have to call the broadcast there since Andy's going to have to step out.
Which is very unfortunate because it has been a lot of fun and the races have been very, very exciting.
So after that race, I think definitely had a lot of fun, and I think people who were interested in BMW are certainly going to have a lot to think about. And hopefully, again, basically every Sunday, we're having some form of community race over at Turn1. So if you'd like to join the community race. Obviously, there are going to be some, as we see Garrett Fisher bouncing off the walls. We have these community races every Sunday. Join the Turn1 Discord, and we'll hopefully see you on track. And um, that's the stream for this evening.
Yes, indeed.
Right. Well, thanks for having me in the booth for the last couple of races, Andy. And
Hey, thanks for helping
thanks.
me out. You definitely provided a better commentary than I did. So thank you so much. And I'm going to end it here. So thank you all for watching, and have a good night.
Night, everyone.